So, welcome to chapter 8. This is the famous chapter in which Anush is sick. I can from experience say this is a chapter that students always remember. Even years afterwards, they remember the Anush is sick chapter. Oh God, not setting any high standards for myself here at all, am I? Okay, so first new point of grammar that we are meeting is, so we have met the imperative in the second person singular, second person plural with the forms tol, come, tolza, come, but come y'all. And negation is fairly simple. We have own forms of the negation verb that are used in the imperative. And here's something to keep, if you're coming from a Finnic language, don't resist the temptation to put any endings to the co-negative form. It's the same as it is in the indicative. So it's don't come is it tol, and don't plural would be then ida tol. So that's all those words, that's all that we need to learn for the negation. And so for the optative forms in the first person plural that they're the indicative forms, like tolana, let's come, or kayana would be let's go, oftentimes in combination with imperative particles like aida and aista. This works in negation too. Like if you want to say let's not go, you just say aista oganakai, aista or aida oganakai, depending on how many people you're talking to. Aida is when you're talking to one person with whom you are on colloquial terms, and aista is if you're talking to a larger group of people. So this is also fairly straightforward. Okay, so now we come to the lative. This is the penultimate uncontroversial case that we are going to meet. Next week, we're going to meet, when we meet the so-called comparative case, then we're going to know all the noun cases that are productive in Mari. The lative is a tricky one because, but the lative basically, it marks both, it's a local case, and it marks both being in something and movement into something, sort of. I'm going to qualify this sort of in a moment. But this seems instantly weird, because why do we need something like this when we have an inessive that marks being in something, like korшташ in the house, and we have an illative marking movement into something? Well, the lative is used in a bunch of very specialized contexts. And well, they're basically, so there's no beating around the bush that the lative is a bit of a pain when you're studying Mari. And there are two ways of looking at this. One of them is the didactic view. What do I actually use this for in the present, in the contemporary language? The other one is the historical view. Why on earth does this thing even exist? There has been some scholarship in this. There's been the traditional view that basically that the illative and the inessive, the cases that we already know that are widely used, that they grammaticalize based on an old lative form, similar to what happened in Hungarian, similar to what happened in the Finnic languages, but that in contrast to Finnic and Hungarian, that the old, like the basis of this, of these cases remained in the language, and sort of as a parallel form that is sort of somewhere in between around these things. There are a lot of scholars who are very critical about this view. First and foremost, Jussi Ylikoski, who has published about some critical essays on this topic. This is very much out of my area of expertise, so I'm not going to say much more about the historical dimension of this. But I will try to sort of delimit the usage situations to some extent. So the lative is not something, it's not something that I actively use all the time, but there are some very specific restricted contexts in which I do use it. So yeah, we'll get to those. So it's not quite like when we met the comparative last week, I was saying that you have basically if you're not approaching a native competency of Mari, don't worry about it too much in your active language usage. There are some situations with the lative where you do need to use it. Okay, so it has the ending esh and is it's one of these e stems, what we call. So its formation is completely equivalent to the formation of the possessive suffix first person singular m and second person singular et, just that we have a sh there. And in some cases, this is going to end up looking similar to the short illative, but only in some. So let's again come back to our groups. This is probably the last time that we're doing this. So we have, we can differentiate between the stems that end in a full vowel, those that end in a consonant, and those that end in a reduced vowel, a, or ö. And the vowel stems here, we can again have a separation to those that end in a or e, and those that end in u or ü. And after a or e, the ending of the lative is sh without the e, and everywhere else it is esh, and in the last group it deletes the unstressed final e or ö. Yeah, so let's see if we can form these. Let's go through these, and let's start with Valentina. Hola.
Olash.
Olash, yes. Here it's notable that this is the standard language form. In dialects, you will encounter also the form Ola Esh. And in Hilmar, this is then the standard form too. Kelvin?
Tengesh.
Yeah. Sonja?
Pasuesh.
Correct. Sophus?
Kutu-ish.
Yep. Sandra?
Sadesh.
Yep. Luan?
Ververesh.
Yep. Gopal?
Kidesh.
Yep. Valentina?
Motesh.
Yep. Kelvin?
Pertesh.
Yep. Sonja?
Vudesh.
Yep. Sophus?
Kachesh.
Yeah. So here, this is something where I can be a bit pedantic when I read linguistic literature on Mari, that often you will see Kitchesh. You will see then it's segmented as Kitche and then the Esh as a lative ending. But the A here that you have in this is not the same A that you have in the nominative. The A in the nominative is deleted by this suffix. So it sounds extremely pedantic, I know, but so it's the kitch. That's between kitch and ish is where the morpheme boundary is. This is similar to like if you had the segmentation of the postposed definite article in Scandinavian languages. Okay. But now I've been blabbering. I can't remember whose turn it was.
Tumotumesh.
Thank you. And Luan?
Kragesh.
Right. Great. So the formation is not the problem here. As you might notice, in Olash and Tengesh, here we have then a problem that in these two, the short illative and the lative, they fall together. You can't see, if you see Olash, it could be either. If you see Tengesh, it could be either. You would need the context to be sure which one it is. In all other cases, you can see if something is the lative or the illative. So what do you need the lative for? Way Arkoniemi characterizes it in his grammar is when he says like the difference between the illative and the lative is, if I'm remembering my Arkoniemi correctly, is that he says that the illative you would use if you really have something, if you have a movement where you can differentiate the origin and the end point. Like you're traveling from Yoshkar-Ola to Moscow. There's a starting point, there's an end point. But the lative is used when you have something coming into something in a way without it being possible to delimit a starting point like this. So a traditional thing, so some examples here would be like sitting down. If you sit down on the couch, from where are you sitting down? You cannot easily say that. Or if you're staying at home, from where are you staying at home? Or being born, like if you're born into a peasant family or so. Or if you hang something up, I'm hanging something up on the wall. I cannot in a meaningful way define a starting point about this, or putting something in somewhere. It should be notable though that in almost all of these cases, you can find the more common local cases too, like divanish shinchash with an illative. You'll find that, you'll encounter that. And this would really, with these verbs, this would really be a worthy corpus linguistic investigation, what the actual, like the split is between the usage of the different cases in these situations. But situations where it is really essential to use the lative, where you have no other alternative, one of them are, so there are two ways to say sorry in Mari. And one of them is they say vuyesh itnal, which is literally don't take it into your head. The other version is nelesh itnal, which is don't take it into heavy. Basically, nela is heavy or difficult or so. And this is just a standing phrase that you have to remember. Vuyesh itnal, vuyesh idanal. It is categorically impossible to use anything other than the lative here. This is one situation. Another situation where it is very conventional to use the lative is if you say something xxx times a time interval, 5 times a week, 3 times a day, 4 times a year, something like that. Where in German you might say pro or so in these cases, 5-mal pro Woche, or situations like this. If you have like a delimitation of this time interval and so many times within this time interval, then you need a lative for these cases. For other typical usage situations of the lative, I would refer you to our learner's grammar of Mari, which is on the course website, where we have an overview of what the of usage situations of the lative. You can also find such overviews if you want, if you're more in descriptive grammars like Alko-Alkonimis grammar. But these are, like, in my opinion, the two situations where one the most commonly has an active need for the lative. Okay. Please interrupt me at any point if there are additional questions to any of the stuff I am talking about. I would proceed then to the necessitive infinitive, which has the ending man, the first of many, many non-finite verbal forms that we will meet. We're almost done with nominal morphology in Mari, but we still have a lot of verbal morphology, both finite and non-finite, coming at us. And so yeah, here's a first one. So the ending man is attached to verbal stems with the same simplifications, if necessary, that we had in the imperative second person singular, when we had shichsa for sit down, y'all. Where I mentioned that it would be essential to keep this in mind, the simplification, because every time we have some kind of suffix attached to a stem that starts in a consonant, we're going to have the same simplifications. This is the first example of that. So let's try to form these necessitive infinitives. And these necessitive infinitives, they're used to, like, it is, they mean like it is necessary to do X, Y, Z. And to whom it is necessary to do something. This can be left to context. It can be just be, say, one must blah, blah, blah. It is necessary that somebody does X, Y, Z. Or you can indicate the person that needs to do something with the dative. In the same way, like as it was with the kulesh auxiliary of necessity. So let's see, from tall to come, Valentina.
Salman.
Yep. Kelvin.
Liman.
Yep. Sonia.
Kochman.
I'm missing a simplification here.
Okay, Kochman.
Kocmem.
you.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if I didn't hear it, but here you have to mind that this morphonotactics do not allow this in the syllable coda. So if you have a consonant coming afterwards, you need to have a simplification that it is kocmem. Okay, then Sophus.
Bucheman.
Yep. Sandra.
Paleman.
Yep. And Luan.
Poema.
Urman. Very nice. Okay. So I mentioned already kulesh, that we already know the kulesh structure, like malam kayash kulesh, I have to go. And now we're meeting malam kayaman. And if you ask me what the difference between these two are, I cannot give you a straight answer. I don't want to say that they're fully equivalent, because usually when people say the two linguistic structures are fully equivalent, they aren't. If you look into the minutiae of the usage, you will find some differences. But the difference between these two options is it is certainly not trivial, and I can't tell you what it is. For me, they feel the same. So malam kayash kulesh, I have to go. Malam kayaman, I have to go. But in negation, they end up indicating differences. And these are differences that are often difficult for language learners of all over the world. I know this practically because my sister used to do English tuition for Austrian kids. And I know how difficult this stuff in English is for Austrian kids. And that is the difference of when you're negating a necessity, the difference between must not and do not have to. Like, you must not do that means it is obligatory that you do not do this. And if I say you don't have to, I mean that it is not obligatory to do this. There is no obligation for you to do it, but you can if you want to. And here, this difference we have in negation. So let's take, for example, the situation is you're at the train station and your train is about to leave. And you've got 2 minutes until your train is leaving, and you're saying, oh God, we've got to rush. Then you could say vashkash kulesh or vashkeman. It is necessary to rush. But now if you are, for example, you're there half an hour early and you have all the time in the world to get to your train. You say there's no necessity to rush. What you would say then is vashkash ok kul. The ok kul one corresponds to you do not have to. It is not necessary to do that. If you are, however, say vashkeman ogel, the negation of the man necessitive infinitive, and here we're meeting our Swiss Army knife negator ogel that we can use to negate various elements. If you say vashkeman ogel, the context where you would say this is, for example, the roads are really slippery and I don't want you to crash and fall. I don't want you to go too fast because it would be dangerous to rush. You must not rush. Then you would say vashkeman ogel. So this is the rough difference that you have between them. You find some cases where it doesn't quite work exactly like this, but tendentially this is how it works. That when you negate kulesh, it means you do not have to do XYZ, and if you negate man, it means you must not do XYZ. Okay. Completely new thing that we're meeting that is, it's very different from Western European languages, but it is very simple, and that's how conditional clauses work. And we're starting with factual conditional clauses. If you do XYZ, then XYZ. As contrasted to counterfactual conditional clauses, which we will meet later, which are if you had done XYZ, then XYZ, but you didn't do it. So we're talking about possibilities that no longer exist. So how this works in Mari, if I say, if you go, I won't go, is that you have one clause that is the condition, and it is a completely normal clause, as if it was a normal declarative clause, followed by gun, meaning if, at the end of the clause. And then we have a second clause, which marks the consequence of it. And that's it. So it's a beautifully simple structure. So, are there any questions for the grammatical points that we have met up to this point?
Yeah, so I asked a question in the chat.
Oh yeah. I have not been following the chat. I see that Samo has also asked something. Yeah, the more abstract usage of movement in the literal sense of the illative as pertains to the lative. Yes, that is a good description of it. I mean, oftentimes we do have things that are actual movements, like sitting down on a sofa. So, but oftentimes it is the abstract things, like being born, which we don't like actually conceptualize as a movement. Can one use the illative inessive in place of lative in each of the first 5 examples you gave? I want to say yes, but I would want to check it in the corpus before I make too strong statements.
Can I ask a question as well?
Yep.
More general thing, and that is that, do you think that there's been a certain amount of Sprachbunding with Russian? Because Russian has a lot of these structures as well.
You mean with the necessitive constructions, or?
Yeah, that's
yes.
Primarily what I'm thinking of, at least.
Yes, I don't feel competent to delimit the exact geographical areas, and the pity that Rika isn't here today. She might have some things to say about it. But yeah, I mean, the question is, however, who is doing the Sprachbindung here? Is it Russia and the languages of Russia doing the Sprachbindung, or is it Europe? Because actually, like Haspelmatt defines it as one of the standard average European features that an experiencer is a nominative subject, as something typically European that is not that usual globally. So I'm not actually confident in saying that it is like a typically Russian, like Russian in the sense of the in connection with the country. That is a typical Russian thing to have the person that needs to do something in as a dative or an equivalent form, rather than that it is typically European to have the person that must do something be in the nominative. But I do think it is clear that the distribution that we have of these 2 patterns is context linguistically relevant. Yes. Yeah. Any other questions? Then we'll get to be. This is now, it's going to look extremely complex, but this is both basically just summarizing and trying to structure the various things that we have already met in earlier chapters in a halfway systematic fashion. So for to be, we have over and over again met 2 stems in Mari for to be. We've had the stem ul and we've had the stem li. And li I've always also translated as to become as a second meaning. So to be or to become. You find cognate forms of both of these stems throughout the language family. I'm not going to say in every Uralic language, because, like, for example, I don't think that Estonian has the li stem, for example, but you find them all over. Like in Finnish, the to be, it almost always uses the cognate forms of the ul stem, except if you go to the potential mood, where you then suddenly have to be, suddenly becomes liene. In Hungarian, you have two separate verbal stems for to be. There's von and les, and where the von one is cognate to the ul in Mari, and the les one is cognate with the li stem. And wherever you are in the language family, it is always roughly the case that the cognate form of the ul form is more static, more present, and the li cognate form is more transformative, future, potential, irrealis in some shape or form. And so in Mari, the distinction is actually, it's fairly similar to Hungarian, actually, that you have that ul stem is the present tense form, And the li, if you use it in the morphological present tense, it's a reference to future forms. Things get a bit trickier to that when we get to past tense forms, but we will get to that. So we'll start with the copulative usage, which is when we use a copula to say X is Y, Bob is a teacher, or whatnot. So here we've met already my journalist ulam, my journalist omel, where we have copula that is used. In the third person singular, you generally skip the copula. You just say tudo cherne, he, she, they is our sick. But like modern speakers might drop the copula also in the first person singular under Russian influence. And so we also have future tense forms with where that is just in li inflected by its normal form. My journalist liam, I will be a journalist, or my journalist omli. It's I will be or I will become. I mean, these notions, they flow into each other. Like those of you that know German will know this quite well, like werden in German, which means both becoming, but it is also, it can also be used just as a future form of to be. Ich werde Arzt also. Or I mean, I'm sorry, no, I'm getting mixed up. It's like ich werde das machen. It can be a future auxiliary too. Okay, yeah, tudo cherne lияш, tudo cherne okli. Here, obviously this is if you want to express future a future circumstance, you need to use the copula because otherwise there would be nothing setting it apart from the present tense forms. So we've also seen existential clauses. There is XYZ, there exists XYZ. Like yumo ulo, yumo uke, there is a God, there is no God. Here things get interesting when we look at the future forms. So if I say like there will be a war, there's only one way to say that. Sar lияш, there will be a war. But I can negate this in two different ways. And one is to say sar okli, the standard negation. Or I can say sar uke lияš, which is then the uke negation, the existential negator that we had, combined with a positive verbal form. And here the existential negator, it's more being used sort of as a as a nominal element of some sort. War will become not. We'll look at the difference between these two structures in a moment. There will be no war. Yes, I think Kevin might be on to something that is close to distinction we'll have. It's the next slide. We're going to look at this systematically. So just stick a pin in it for a moment. So yeah, if I say there are friends, there are no friends, yoltash vlak ulet, yoltash vlak uke ulet. Here, if I'm outside of the third person singular, I want to have existential negation. Here, the only way to do it is to have uke combined with the positive form of to be. Or if I'm in the future, I can say yoltash vlak liet, there will be friends, or I can say yoltash vlak ugetli or yoltash vlak uke liet. We're going to look at the forms later. Gopal is asking, can uke be used with any other verb to negate? To the best of my knowledge, no. It's really only used in combination with to be. At least to the best of my knowledge, the corpus might, in the corpus, you might find something else, some situation that I'm not thinking of. Okay, but so the difference between sar okli and sar uke lияš. Both of these are grammatical, but they're not exactly the same. And the difference is between the two is the first one is that you're saying that something that does not exist now will not come into existence. Whereas in the second one, you're saying that something that does exist now is going to stop existing. Like a typical usage situations you could think of is like Neville Chamberlain returning from Munich, having sold away Czechoslovakia to Nazi Germany, trying to appease Hitler, and is famously said that this deal will mean peace in our times. He was thinking he was averting a war. There will be no war. He says this at the time when Europe at least was at peace, in his understanding of peace. So he would have here said, if he were speaking Mari, he would have said, "Sag okli, there will not be a war. We will be avoiding this this calamity." If, however, we're in the 1960s in America, and there's a war going on in Vietnam. Everybody knows there's a war going on in Vietnam. Nobody's denying this, but you have some. You are a pacifist, you are a hippie, and you are believing that the whole principle of war will go away, will disappear from the world. And you could say, "Sag uke lияш," there is war now, but there will not be in future. The thing that exists now will stop existing. So that's the rough difference between these two structures. Yeah, so existential clauses outside of the first person, outside of the third person, are unusual, but they do occur. Like for fun, Timothy Riese and I had our Mari native speakers translate some deka into Mari, and then some negative deka. Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. And then we tried, well, what about non cogito ergo non sum? I do not think, therefore I am not. And systematically with Mari native speakers, they then produce the structure shonem tu geje ulam. There, I think, therefore I am, but shono, I do not think, tu geje, thus uke ulam. Not omal. You cannot use omal in this context. And okay, so this was a very artificial context that we thought of here, but there are natural contexts in which this happens. And that is, for example, when people are contemplating a word after their death. Like when I no longer am in this world, wenn es mich nicht mehr gibt, if I was speaking German, when I no longer exist or so. Or like one example I found is in a children's book where there is a little hedgehog that is depressed because all the other animals are playing and the hedgehog is not invited to the party. And the hedgehog is sitting at home and thinking about how all the other animals are playing together, but they don't even care about me. And it's like, nunulan puito mi uke ulam. It's like, for them, it's like I didn't exist, kind of. So it's marginal, but it happens. And you can really impress a Mari if you ever use this actively. Though may you not have need to use it actively. Okay. Yeah, you can also but you can also use it in less dramatic. If you have a locational dimension to it, you can use it in less dramatic context, like I won't be here tomorrow. Tishte omli, I will not be here, or tishte ukeliam. And here we have then like the similar connotations here. If you say tishte omli, what means like I'm not going to come here tomorrow. But if you say tishte ukeliam, it's kind of, the implication is that you will have disappeared by then. Okay, subpoint locational existential, there is XYZ in place XYZ. So if I say like there are mushrooms in the forest, or there will be mushrooms in the forest, like it's raining and you're saying, there are going to be mushrooms in the forest or whatnot. These basically work just like the existential clauses, just that you have a locational element of some sort at the beginning, like choderaste in the forest. And this is a bit different from pure locational sentences. They look similar, but they're not quite the same. If you have locational existential, it means there is XYZ in the forest, there is not XYZ in the forest. But if you have, in an actual locational construction, you are not debating the existence of an object. You are accepting the existence of something as a given. But you're talking about where that thing that you know to exist is. Like I am in Yoshkaola, I am not in Yoshkaola. And here you have, it's like mi Yoshkaolaste ulam, mi Yoshkaolaste omo, as if I'm not in Yoshkaola. Of course, then there's like the dividing line can be somewhat tricky. Like we had the Tishte Omli thing. Okay. And here we find a weird mix then, kind of, between the existential paradigm and the copulative paradigm. That if I say like the table is in the other room, you would say it without a copula. If you had to use a copula, you would use the existential positive one, ulo. But you generally wouldn't. But if you're saying that it's not in the other table, in the other room, the table is not in the other room, it's here, then you would say ustelves polemiste ogol and not uke. Because if you say uke, you're saying that something does not exist. Yeah, sumkavlak, the bags.
Sorry, they are so
yeah.
funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So as we have already discussed, possessive constructions in Mari, another context for to be, are essentially existential clauses. Like Sergei has a car means Sergei's car exists, Sergei's car does not exist. But we have already discussed this, so I'm going to basically gloss over this, I think. Are there any questions about the whole domain of things that are and things that aren't before we move on?
Yes, in the possessive sentence, so Sergei has a car, can I omit the to be copula? Sergei machinage.
Not in this case, because if you just say Sergei machinage, it's like Sergei's car, and then my instinctive reaction is, well, what about Sergei's car? What is he doing? But if you have a numeral or some kind of quantifier or so before it, then it becomes permissible to have it. Like if you say Sergei has 17 cars, and I say Sergei lachum machinage. That's already the statement. That's it. You don't have to say anything more. That's already, you're already saying 17 cars. Okay, you don't. So it becomes less weird to not have the ulo. Or if you have like an adjective, it becomes less weird to drop the ulo. Like if I say Sergei yoshkar machinage or so, I still would tendentially use it, but yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so I have a question about the use of udo in like locational sentences. So in the example, the table is in the other room.
Yeah.
If you do not have udo, then that would be like the table is in the other room. But if you have udo, would it be like there is a table in the other room?
Not really, because the word order would be different. If you said that there is a table in the other room, you would say ves polemischte ustel ulo.
Right. Okay. So with this word order, whether or not you have ulo doesn't really change the meaning.
It does not really, no.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, and this is also something I kind of want to check this in the corpus myself, because this is our more native speakers said, yeah, well, yeah, you could say that. We probably wouldn't, but it's permissible. I'm actually curious how often we will find this in the corpus. We look for this specific ordering, but I don't have any data at this point in time.
So, can I
Yeah.
ask one more question?
Yeah,
So,
sure.
with the negative existential verb, where does the stress ordinarily fall? Because it looks like you're writing uke, but saying uke.
Both. It's tricky. So, like, the truth of the matter is I prefer to write it with uke, with a stress on the last syllable, because that does not violate vowel harmony. Because uke actually, or why is it not uko, as one would expect in vowel harmony? But you do find, but both forms are permissible, uke and uke. And it's a bit sloppy of me that I am writing one thing and saying another, but both forms are permissible. Any other questions? Okay, so ak, the clitic ak. This is another one where we have stress jumping back and forth, because revezak or revezak, both are possible. That sometimes it is stressed, sometimes it is not. So ak, this is it's a clitic borrowed from Chuvash, and it is used to sort of stress identity in a way. It'd be like, if you had to translate it into English, it could be like just or something like this. In German, it could be gerade or something like that. So it's like, if I have like Tide Revese, this boy, this is fairly neutral. But if I say Tide, like like I'm getting, like, let's say that I'm, there's some young man walking around my neighborhood, and I'm saying to a friend, oh God, this young man, I already saw him yesterday, just exactly this one, the one that I'm seeing now. Then I could say, tide gewesen mak, and Negation, like I saw I saw this person yesterday, or so. So it's like exactly the one like that. Or if you like say, like, oh, a friend gets a new laptop, and you say, oh, I have the same laptop or so. You could also, in context like this, you would use the ak thing. So it is sort of like to stress identity, or like it's often called like an emphatic particle. I kind of hate this term because it's thrown around so often that it doesn't really tell you what something is. But yeah, so the usage cases go sort of in this direction. We will revisit it at later points, just now that you're warned that this thing exists. Okay. And now we come to the usage of the possessive suffix third person singular in contexts where we might not have expected it at first. And here's an excerpt from this chapter's text. We're going to get to it. So the doctor is giving Yelu instructions on what to do for her sick child. And at the end, he says, and also you have to give the kid vitamin T and hot milk to drink. And then Yelu responds by saying, vitaminan chayjum kuze ishtiman, with a possessive suffix, third person singular, chayjum. How does one make her vitamin T? So this is not even just an area thing. This is a macro area thing. You find this throughout, heading to the northeast from Mari, you're going to find this everywhere, be it in the languages of the Volga-Kama region, or also in the Ob-Ugric languages or whatnot. That these elements that we call possessive suffixes, especially in the third person singular, they don't necessarily always mark possession. They can also mark a continuation of a salient reference of some sort. And often it is then where we call, like Western scholars might often call this definiteness, which is a poor description of what is happening here. It's more like similar, like you might more use a demonstrative pronoun in English. Is it like German Mann? Not really. No, no. That the man part of this is in just like the impersonal nature that comes from the non-verbal form. It's like this, like how do I make this vitamin T? The vitamin T that is somehow salient to the discussion in already. So it's important to not always do literal translations of possessive suffixes. Or also another thing is, like if you're going down the street and you come to a wall and there are 3 doors on the wall, and I say to a friend, hey, open that door. You could in Mari say omsajem poch with a possessive suffix third person singular. But if we're coming to the same wall and there's just one door there, I would have to say omsam poch without a possessive suffix, because a possessive suffix third person singular can also mark that something is a part of a larger set that is somehow salient in the conversation. Like I'm saying, open that door. Like it's sort of like I have to force this a bit to try to describe this in English terms. But if I like in English, there were 3 doors, and I say to my friend, open that door. By saying open that door, I'm implying that there would be several options. That door and not that one. But if there's just one door, and I say, hey, open that door. Okay, there are contexts where you could imagine it, but it's also a bit like, okay, which other door would there be? So this is like in such contexts, the possessive suffix third person singular is then quite often used. And like a prototypical thing is if you have the one and the other, like 2 cats are walking down the street, and one of them is orange and the other one is black. you would say one possessive suffix third person singular, the other possessive suffix third person singular, because the individual elements here are subsets of the salient class of the two cats that were walking down the street that I was just talking about. Valentina is Sandra is saying, has it usually been mentioned before? Either it has been mentioned before, or it is salient to the conversation by extra linguists for extra linguistic reasons. Like we're standing in front of it and we both see it, and we have the shared information base of there being 3 doors or so in that context. But like oftentimes it will be just referring back to something that has been mentioned, like with the vitamin T. Valentina was saying, is it related to Russian particle je, like takoije? This is, I think, pertaining to ak. Yes, you can liken them in some context. The Russian je is somewhat similar to the ak. Gopal is saying, in the case of 3 doors, is it grammatical to not have the possessive? Good question. This is like really on the limits of my Mari language competency. My feeling is that it would be grammatical, but that it would not be equivalent. It would kind of not be expressing it as if there would be other options. Like, for example, let's say you're in an apartment block and you're on a corridor, and there are all kinds of doors along the corridor, all kinds of flats of strangers to you, and you're standing in front of your friend's flat and you're saying to, I don't know, your spouse or with whoever you are there, open the door. Like in that context, you might not consider the other doors to be potentially openable, because it would be a very strange thing to go to a stranger's flat and just open the door. So that this is my guess here, that it is possible, but that the connotations, the implications are different. Okay, that's it for the grammar for now. Are there any acute questions left?
Yes, just a small one. Does this like when the third person possessive comes after a first person possessive, like or in like cases like those, does it still undergo vowel harmony?
No, simply because the possessive suffix of the first person singular, it's either it is m, and in that case, if you have the m from the suffix, that only gives you one possibility there, like that's the m, like after an a, it's going to be a, the vowel harmonic variant. And only after a does the possessive suffix first person singular not have a vowel, but after a it's also a. So basically it's always going to be a. Or maybe that's what Valentina meant. Maybe I misunderstood your question. If then the, like, if I have like kide stemje in my hand or so, if that is related to the Russian particle je, that this has been postulated that it is not initially related, but that there has been some influence in the exact usage of the possessive suffix, simply because it becomes homonymous with the Russian particle je in so many situations. It's certainly not the only reason why this happens, because the same stuff happens in other Uralic languages where the possessive suffix looks nothing like the Russian the Russian J. But you do find some cases where like Mari is extra eager to use the possessive suffix, where I think J has been context. Like a very, like one thing that I've seen all over is like on verbs, like palem, I know, palem J, oh, I know. And that's like exactly like znаю, ja znаю, znаю, that you have like with the J, that it sort of has a particle denoting the O, and there I would find it very plausible that that is under more under Russian influence. Yeah, because
they can have
because also attaching possessive suffixes to verbal forms, that would not be so common in other languages of the region.
So like what does it mean when you add it to a verb?
if you add it to a verb, like if you have like palem is I know, and palemje is sort of like, oh, I know. You're sort of like low-key expressing annoyance in a way.
Like, is it something like you're focusing the fact that the addressee should have known that you already know?
I'm not sure. Like, maybe Valentina can help me with this, because it's exactly like Russian "я же знаю."
Yeah, it's as Jeremy said, it sounds a bit passive aggressive. You say "я знаю," I know. "Я же знаю" is like, why are you telling me? I already know, but you're not really being aggressive. But personally, I don't think that's the same "je" as in Mari. It's not. You shouldn't see it as a possessive suffix. It's more of a let's say you are reinforcing the message.
Yeah. It's like German "doch" is fairly similar. Das weiß ich doch, or so. It's like you are implying in this context that you do not actually need the information you are being given because you already had it. Yeah. Okay, any other grammar questions? Okay, then to word and word usage. There's going to be some more grammar in here, but stuff that we're not yet looking at in an overly systematic fashion. So to be just looked at on an individual basis. One thing that we have here is that it is in Mari perfectly legitimate to put possessive suffixes on interrogative pronouns. It ends up, it's not actually that difficult to translate. So if you say like mo et koshta, it's like your what hurts. And here you can also use the form much, this irregular form of the possessive suffix that we have with some kinship terms. Or like que dam vucheda, your plural, whom are you waiting for? Like which person that is somehow affiliated to you, like a member of your family or whatnot, are you waiting for? Or mo da uke, like mo what da, your what is missing, what of yours is missing. So yeah, we'll have this in the text. Okay, so this is a really cool pattern, a really cool thing that we have. This is definitely a Volga thing. You'll have this all over. One possibility to express a volition in Mari. In some Volga, like unless I'm completely mistaken, in Udmurt, this is the standard way of expressing a wanting without there being other alternatives. In Mari, it's one of two basic ways. So Mari does not have a verb to want. You have to use other structures to express that you want to do something. And the structure that we're meeting here is kocmem okshu. What it literally is, it's the passive participle of the verb to eat. So eaten or something like that. But as we will learn fairly soon, the label passive participle is insufficient to describe the range of functions that this form has, because it's also used as a verbal noun and in various other contexts. But so my eaten, is it? So it's a passive participle, and then with possessive suffix, okshu does not arrive. And you can have it in positive also, kocmem shuesh, my eating arrives. I don't want to eat and I want to eat, respectively. What is notable here, though, that this is not the normal way of saying that you want something. It is wanting something with the intentional volition of the speaker backgrounded. You're not wanting something because you have made a rational choice that this is what you want to do or this is not what you want to do. You want something based onto internal. Valentina, I'll let you in then again. So you are expressing that you want to do something for reasons that are outside of your rational control. Like in this chapter, spoiler alert, Anush is sick. So Anush does not want to eat, not because she has decided, I don't want to eat. If she were to do that, she would use the so-called desiderative mood, which we're going to meet in a later chapter. Kocmem, I want to eat. Inem koch, I do not want to eat. But she is indicating that due to reasons outside of her control, like her being sick, she does not want to eat. So like it's sort of like going the direction of I'm not hungry. So English does not have like a systematic structure that works in the same way, but some languages that you know might have those. For example, German has something, and that is the mir ist nach construction. Mir ist nicht danach, mir ist danach, or so. It's not as productive. It's not as widely used as the Mari construction, but it does exist. And especially productive in Russian is the мне хочется construction. That is like there's я хочу is I want to, and мне хочется would be also like I want to, but you are downplaying your agency in this. It's like мне it's with a dative. To me, it is wanted to. Blah blah blah. The same in Bengali. What do you mean? Like the whole structure? Is this something like this? Is it used really in Bengali?
Yeah, it's like hunger is not coming to me.
Okay, and is the hunger, is it a verbal form of some sort, or is it the noun?
It's let me think. Amarkide pachina, amarkidaschina. Yeah, we would use a verbal form, like come would be verbal, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to get back to you on that topic because this is really cool. That like so many of these patterns, these like Eastern patterns, it has not been properly described how wide an area they are used, and you're going to be this is going to be extremely obvious next week. Okay, this is going to be very obvious next week when we look at converb constructions. That there are going to be a lot of things that I'm thinking are going to seem familiar to you from Bengali.
Is it so, for example, in this construction, so instead of like kocmem, you can also like use something like this for, say, like I'm not feeling sleepy. So like it would be like sleep is not coming to me. So
yeah, you could say that malame okshu, malame shuesh. Like my sleep, my slept is arriving, my slept is not arriving. And that you can contrast in with the desiderative forms malanem, I want to sleep, I don't want to sleep, male. So yeah.
So I have a question. You have like these kinds of stuff in Tamil too, but you can't use the like sleep does not come to me kind of construction for every verb, only for like stuff that you experience, like sleeping or hunger. Yeah. Can you use this construction in Mari for like all verbs?
Yes, but actually no. Well, sort of. This is again something I would want to look at in the corpus. So basically, I would say the pattern is productive, but it is just way more likely that it would be used with something like eating, sleeping, or something or not, because it is like way less likely that like if you're talking about fixing a bicycle, it would not be so common that you get just the craving to fix a bicycle but have no rational control over it. It just came over me that I need to fix a bicycle, or like it does not come over me to fix my bicycle. So, but I would really want to look at this before I commit myself to an answer. Yeah, and Kevin's pointing out I can imagine saying like eating, sleeping isn't going to happen in English, but it's very colloquial. Yeah. Okay, but again, for the normal way of intentional, like volition, where you have some agency, that's with the desiderative that we are going to meet fairly soon. Okay, another thing in the chapter that we encounter is when we say that somebody has a disease, like here Anush has tonsillitis. You just say tudın angine, like genitive and then the disease. You would not use an existential thing that, like an ulo. Like if you say tudın angine ulo, it's like, oh, what? She has tons. Did you go to the market and buy yourself tonsillitis or what? Yeah. So that's just you would with diseases. The copula is you cannot have a copula element. Okay. Infinitive usage, this just as a note, if you know English, this is not that weird, is that you can use just infinitives in like impersonal constructions. Like if I say tide knigam kushan pishtash, where to put this book, where should one put this book? You can have this just as an infinitive without any superordinate verb of any point. This kushan, this is the where, but in the lative. Kushan sakash, like where to hang this portrait. In what kind of water to cook rice or so. Yeah, just so that you're not surprised to have sentences that have just an infinitive but then don't have a finite verb of any kind. Okay, anatomical terms, I don't have much to say here. These are some important things to learn. Just a few notes that I would give. One is that parnya, finger, is also used for toe, and you can disambiguate between them by saying either yolvarnya, which is then like foot toe or foot finger, or kitpanya, hand finger. If you just say panya, usually it would be, you would understand it as finger, but it can also be toe. And if you're like in a context, like, I don't know, you're getting a pedicure done, then you might just use panya in reference to your toes when they are more important to the context at hand. Yeah, so here, Mari uses like a typical Eastern thing. The word kit, it means both hand and arm, that in usual speech, you do not disambiguate between the two. You can have kopa is like sort of the palm of the hand, and it is used more commonly than like palm is in English when it is necessary to disambiguate between the two. Yeah, yeah. Sami also has foot fingers. Yeah. Kinyavui is just a cool one, just because this is so similar throughout the various Uralic languages. Like if you the Finnish and Hungarian words are fairly similar, even though vui and Mari vui and Finnish pa are allegedly not cognate forms actually, which surprised me when I learned it. Yeah. So yeah, we already know Yilma as tongue and language. One note that I wanted to make though, in line with Mari's general tendency to not use explicit plural forms unless they are unless they are explicitly necessary. If I just use if I just use the word shincha, usually it would mean eyes, both of them. Like if I say I mean my eyes are hurting. But if I then ask, you could then ask if I asked in kudo shinchat, which of your eyes, then you could say min pula or shola shinchan koshta, my right or my left eye hurts. But usually the neutral reading would be that it is two. But this again, it depends on context. Like if you are like you see a statue of a great big eyeball somewhere, which I'm sure exists somewhere in the world, and you were there with Amari would say, oh, what a big, you would just say, mogai kugushincha, what a big eye. You would not have to in some way singularize this here. So the context is king as regards the interpretation of the nouns that refer to paired body parts like eyes, ears, hands, feet, and such. Yeah. Okay, just a quick addition so we've met the word verb kodash, kodam, like when Anush and when Ichan and his grandpa were talking about who's going to stay. We had kodash, kodam is to stay, and kodem is to leave something somewhere. So the transitive counterpart to that. It's a lot like the Finnish difference between yada and yetta. And it's important not to get these two mixed up. So if I say kochai, kovai, kotsa, grandpa, grandma, stay. But if I say retzebdam, kodasa, leave your prescription, a transitive verb here. Here it is the second conjugation. Yeah, quick note just on güch. that we met it as from, but it also is used in temporal context, like kum kechik güch is in 3 days, after 3 days. And it can also be if I'm delimiting time windows, like from Monday to Wednesday, or from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, with Marte as the finite thing and güch is the beginning. So shochmo güch from Monday to Wednesday. Okay, yıҥgırtаш, a little note that we have here. All of us that already know SMS Salam know the answer to this question. What the government of this verb is, that it occurs with the dative. So this is the same as it is in Russian, but it is different as it is, for example, in German or in Hungarian. So this is something that I have to tell my students to be wary, to be careful about. And I just love this example also because this is something where a lot of the reference materials don't tell you what direction of this verb is, but Mari pop music has your back and immediately tells you how to use this verb. Yeah, and if you're talking about where to, like where you call, like call at the office, call at work, it is with the illative, into something. This is again different as in German, for example, where you say call in something. Okay. And one more note on lияш, to be or to become. It can also be used in sentences noting if something is permissible or not. So next week we're going to learn how to say can, to be able, like I can read, I cannot read. This is used to say if something is allowed, like smoking is forbidden, smoking is not allowed, but reading is allowed here, for example. So if you, or possible or so, like I say, this can be done in 2 days. Or when the child is sick, the child, here indicate with the genitive, the person to whom it is permissible, should not go to the kindergarten. So so the prohibition is expressed here with the negative forms of li. Okay, also quick revision. We have already discussed this, I believe, how to answer yes or no questions in Mari. So there are several forms of yes that one can use. And there's also uke, which can be for a negation. In negation is uke, which not only is used in existential clauses, but also just as no. But Mari also likes to do sort of mirror predicates. Like this is something the Finnish likes to do this too. Like if I ask you, are you coming? You might, instead of saying yes or no, you might respond by saying, am coming or am not coming. That you just take the proposition and you either repeat it in the affirmative or in the negative. You can do that in Mari too, but there's one thing that one needs to be careful of here. And this is like, tolatmo, are you coming? And you can say, okay, tuge, yes. Da, yes. Okay, there's nothing surprising here. Yes, I'm coming. Yes, I'm coming. This da, this is of course in the Russian, but and tuge like this, I think I would say that this is probably also influenced by how tak is used in Russian. Which is also used sort of as an affirmative element as before. And here is just tolam, the mirror proposition. But okay, if I say to the tunik to shore, I can. Yeah. Sorry, this is still positive forms. But let's look at the negative forms. If I say tolatmo, I can say uke. I'm not uke omtol, or I can say omtol. But if I'm lazy and I don't want to have the co-negative form. I don't want to say I don't want to say the tall part. I just say, are you coming? And you say, I'm not. Without while dropping the verb. You cannot just say You instead here use the form ogum, which is a long form of the negation verb that is used when you don't have a co-negative form following it. So ogum is like I won't. Yeah. Okay. Oh boy, we have a lot of notes here. So chерле, which literally is kind of like diseased. Cher is disease, and le is a Turkic derivational suffix that having XYZ. So and it can either mean sick, ill when in reference to a person, or it can also be used in reference to a body part to say that something is diseased or not well. Like if you have your hand is injured in some way, you could say that it is chерле. Or if you have a heart that has problems, you could say that your heart is chерле or whatnot. Okay, yeah, two more. So iktаж naре, this we have when talking about giving a rough estimate of how much something is, where we had like iktаж latvich minut naре. It's kind of like double marking in a way. Iktаж is like some and naре is about. So, and you can do perfectly fine with just one of them. Like you say kok I naре, about 2 years, or you can say iktаж kum shude vitle tengem, like, can you give me approximately 350 rubles? Like approximately, and then such exact value. But okay, but it's like some. Can you give me some 350 rubles or so? And yeah, if you have both of them, it's like boil the herbs in hot water for some 15 minutes or so. You just kind of like you're double marking the uncertainty. Yeah. Okay, and korшташ, to hurt. This is just this is one verb that really does not occur outside of the third person singular. This I've actually checked in the corpus, that you never find this in the first person, second person or so. It's always just something hurts, intransitive. My hand hurts, my head hurts, my heart hurts, or whatever. But it's always just in the present tense it's going to be korshta and it can be negated, it can be put in the past tense, but it cannot be taken out of the third person singular. So that's it with words and word usage. Or have any questions come up?
Yeah, just the previous slide, Jeremy, there was an example of when the logarithm korshta. So even if there are like two parts and they are not connected with dene, the verb comes in singular form.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, if there are no other questions, I would get to the text. Give me a moment that I can get the audio again. Okay.
Anush Cherne.
Can people hear that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Then, so Anush Cherne, Anush is sick. And I'll play from the recording and then ask everybody to translate a sentence. And sometimes when the sentences get extremely small, I'll assign several sentences at one.
Anush Cherne. Anush, idorem, Kaniel, вашке кочкаш шинчена.
So, Mikke?
Anush, my daughter, wake up or get up. We're gonna sit down to eat fast or quickly.
Yep, or soon, something like that.
Кочмем окшу авай. Мыйын вуем да логарем коршта.
I like how the echo effect from the bad recording conditions under which we made it makes her sound ethereal and otherworldly and kind of sick. Valentina.
Yeah, she really does sound a bit sick. Yeah. So she's saying, Mom, I don't want to eat. My head and throat hurt.
Коршта.
Туге ganit Kaniel. You just said the shogunakai, alright?
So Kevin?
Then don't eat, or then don't get up, and we're not going to kindergarten.
Nakai, врачем и жена. Сергей, поликлиника йыҥгырте, врачем ӱж, Анушна черле.
So this one goes to Sonia.
Shall I read it as well or just translate? Sorry, I just don't remember.
You can read it too, yeah.
Okay. Vraćam žena, Sergej poliklinikas, yıҥgırte, vraćam adushna čerle.
Yeah.
We'll call the doctor. Sergej, call to the polyclinic or to the health center, and to call the doctor. Our Anush is
Yep. Okay, now the next sentence is the absolute favorite sentence in this textbook from my colleague Johannes, who was here at the beginning but didn't stay for the whole thing, and we'll see if Sophus can tell me why.
Мен пашашкат йыҥгырте ок тол ман.
So Sophus?
Yes, she says, and call my job and tell them that I won't come, or that she won't come, it says directly.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So what it is like intentionally is call them and tell them that I'm not coming. But that's not what she says. What she's saying is call them and tell them that she is not coming. Because so this is something that Mari likes to do, and a lot of languages in the region do. It's an so-called indexical shift that basically in a narrative, you shift the perspective from the teller to the sort of the person that is central to the narrative. And since she is talking about what Sergei should be doing, she is shifting her reference to Sergei's frame of reference. And when Sergei calls the office, he's not going to say, I'm not coming. He's telling them, she's not coming. Yelu, my wife. So, and this is the kind of thing, it's a really cool thing because like the Mari, our Mari native speakers who wrote the sentence, I'm sure they didn't think a thing in the world when they wrote this, but it's like a systematic thing that Mari does, which I find very cool. And yeah, Johannes finds extremely cool.
Jeremy,
yeah.
may I have a question?
Yeah.
I just wonder if the Mari people or Mari couples are so straightforward, like Sergei announcing that they are about to have, or they are going to have guests in the evening, and then Yellow like ordering him or kind of like telling him what to do. And is it like for the sake of the textbook, or is it really like how they communicate with each other?
It is how they communicate, and they are like sort of the Maris can be very spontaneous in their plans sometimes. That they're very spontaneously is a very rigid plan that has not been fleshed out in any sort of detail, but this is what we're doing now. Okay. And like I had the same reaction when reading this textbook. It's getting worse. It gets worse because there's like a point where Sergei comes home and tells the kids that we're going to go on a vacation. And then Yelu comes home and asking, why is everybody happy? And Sergei says, oh, I just told the kids that we're going on a vacation, but Yelu didn't know about this. And I mean, I'm just thinking of this context of like, father tells the kids that they're going on a holiday before discussing anything with his wife. Like, I mean, this sounds like a stabbable offense to me, but somehow Sergei gets away with this. But it reminds me of how things often happen among the Maris, that, okay, let's do this thing. Oh, wait, we didn't plan this through at all. Like when a student group of mine, when we were on our way to Bashkortostan at some point during a class, we were going to a village somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Bashkortostan, and we were on the little bus heading there. When we on the way there, it suddenly became increasingly clear to us that nobody had looked at the map how to actually get to this village. They just assumed that they would find the way because they had been there somewhere before. And then we end up like in some like dirt road in the middle of nowhere in Bashkortostan, and the head of our expedition gets on her phone and calls her sister and is on the phone with her sister and says, so yeah, we're on a dirt road and there are cows to our left and an electricity mast to our right. So where are we? And we were just like, we were sitting in the back of the bus and just like blown away. How is this happening? But of course, in the end, we got there. We got to the village. Everything happened exactly according to the plan. Yeah. Yeah. Also, Mike was part of this group, and like all the students that were part of that ended up being somewhat mesmerized would be the nice way to say it. Like we were in a random village, for example, in the middle of Bashkortostan. Suddenly we hear the sound of like some cars in the distance. Suddenly everybody runs out in the street and we see that there's like a wedding procession coming on, like a bunch of cars dressed up. Obviously a couple is just getting married and they're going through the procession. And the Maris who were hosting us, they ran out in the middle of the street and they waved down the wedding procession, and they got everybody to get out of the cars. And there was a big celebration and dancing with these people. And we at first thought, oh, they must have expected this. This must be like some family happening that they knew were happening. No, they were complete strangers. It was spontaneously decided, we're going to these people are getting married. We have to celebrate that. And yeah, that gave us a bit of a culture shock, especially the Finnish members of our expeditions. They're just, how can this be happening? How is this actually a decision that somebody decided to make? But in the Mari context, it's a perfectly natural thing to do. It's like, hey, they're getting married, let's celebrate. Yeah. Okay, now I have completely forgotten where we were. The next one up is Sandra with what Sergei has to say in response. One moment.
Yürayelu, kızdak yıngırtım.
Yeah, Sandra?
I forgot what yura is.
Yara it's technically a verbal form of like to be suited, and it works in German. It's like passt, es geht, or so. It's like okay, good, yes.
Okay, I will call right away.
Mm-hmm.
Porokechilize.
Porokeche.
Gütenden çerle.
Okay, so Luan, maybe these three sentences.
Good day. Good day. Who of you is sick?
Mm-hmm.
Çerle. Onçuko ertaza.
So Gopal?
Which one is this again? Yeah, right. So Iverim Chirle, so my daughter is sick, and Onchuko Irtaza, so like come on in, or like let's go in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like literally it's like step forward or so. But it's like come on in, come further in.
Lümet kuzeydürem.
Anush.
Then Mike?
What's your name, my daughter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or like here it would be like my girl. Yeah.
Moit koşta Anush.
Vujem da lugarim korshta.
Valentina?
So what is it that hurts you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then I was wondering who's gonna get the next one, and it's Kevin.
Muşatım poç da aman.
Yeah.
Umshatim poch da aman. So open up your mouth and say ah.
Yep. Okay.
Anush çerle.
Oops. Okay, so it continues.
Logarze yoshkarge, temperatur żatulo.
Sonia?
Logarze yoshkarge, temperatur żatulo. Well, her throat is all red, and she also has temperature. In this case, I wonder, so actually you can use the commutative case also with like
it looks like it, but that's not what it is. It's we're gonna revisit this in the next chapter. Is that the Mari color terms all have so-called have short forms and long forms, depending on if they are used attributively or predicatively or even nominally. So it's like we know red already as Yoshkar, like in Yoshkar Ola, the red city. But if you're using it as a predicative, like you say something is red, then it is like here Logarje Yoshkarge. And it's not the commutative. It's unstressed because the commutative would be stressed. And also if like if you use it as a noun, like the Reds, if you're talking, for example, about Russian history and you have like the Reds in the Russian Civil War, those would be then Yoshkarge Vlak. But yeah, we'll get back to this next week.
Thank you.
Yeah. And did you translate the second one already?
Yes, but I can say it again. She also has temperature.
Yep.
Or fever or.
Yeah.
Йочадам кудашса, мый тудым колыштам.
Then Sophus.
Undress your child or take off her clothes. I will listen to her.
Yeah. So well, this is something I can't think of what.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the listening to. I forget what the technical word for this is in English. In German, it's abhören, like with the stethoscope. You use korшташ, listen, for that too. There's some Latin stem that is used by medical professionals in English, and I don't know it now off the top of my head.
As a patient, they just say, I'm gonna listen to your heart or something, or lungs or something.
Yeah. I've never been to a doctor in the English speaking world, so not the right reference here. So then, yeah, that's auscultation is what Yuka says. That's the word I was trying to think of.
Тудын ангин. Йочалан садикыш кошташ ок лий.
Then Sandra.
She has tonsillitis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh God. Basically, this child won't be going to the kindergarten, but more complicated.
Yes, that is correct. Both parts of it. So literally it is to the child, into the kindergarten, to go is not. And this is then the whole li being used to indicate if something is permissible or not. So the child should not go to the kindergarten. Yeah.
Мый тыланда рецептым возем.
Luan?
I write you a prescription.
Yep.
Тиде эмым кечеш кум гана пуыман.
Then Gopal?
This medicine, I'm not sure what Ghana is.
Times.
Right. So, like, give her this medicine 3 times a day.
Yeah. So this literally, it's a necessitive construction. This medicine must be given 3 times.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Эше витаминан чайым да шокшо шӧрым йӱктыман.
So, Mike?
Also, you should give her vitamin T and warm milk to drink.
Yep.
Витаминан чайжым кузе ыштыман?
Valentina?
So how to prepare this vitamin T?
Exactly.
Шокшо вӱдеш иктаж 25 минут наре тӱрлӧ шудым шолтыза да тиде чайым йочаланда йӱктыза.
So, Kevin?
Okay, so шокшо вӱдеш иктаж 25 минут наре тӱрлӧ шудым шолтыза. So boil something in hot water for some 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, that's right. And it's the tyrle shudum is the critical thing. And it's like tyrle is different, diverse, various. And shudo it's grass, but it's also herbs. So boil different herbs in hot water for some 15 minutes. And
okay, and give the child this tea to drink.
Yep.
Поро каҥашланда тау. Мыланна поликлиникыш кунам мийыман?
So, Sonia?
Поро каҥашланда тау. Мыланна поликлиникыш кунам мийынам. So, many thanks for your advice. And when do we have to come to the health center?
Yep.
Теле йоча дене ида кошт. Мый 3 кече гыч шке толам. Таза лийза.
So that's Sophus.
Don't go with a sick child. I will come myself in 3 days. Goodbye.
Yeah. So Tazaliza, it's like literally be healthy. But it's used in a wide array of contexts. You will sometimes also find it as the salutation upon drinking among Maoris, like the cheers counterpart. But in actuality, well, it does happen as that, but in actuality, often it's like, this is a general Russian thing, is that it is considered very lowbrow and uncreative to always say the same thing upon drinking. The salutations should be personalized in some way. You should always say to what or to whom you are drinking this or that round. Yeah.
But you also say that when someone sneezes, right?
Yes, you do. So, and Sandra?
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Jeremy,
yeah.
May I have a question? When talking about being ill, how are the Mari people coping with COVID situation?
Okay.
Unless this is the topic that should be avoided.
It's a topic. Let's do it after I close end the recording, because it's very topical and people are watching this in 2027. Hello, person watching this video in 2027 might be very confused by this discussion. Well, probably not. They'll probably remember COVID. But one thing I will just say about COVID is that there is a very beautiful reanalysis among the Maoris, and that is that I have heard heard it referred to as coronavirus, which is corona is road. So the coronavirus is the road virus. It's the virus that you get if you don't stay at home. If you go out and spend time socializing with people out on the road and whatnot, you'll get the coronavirus, the road virus. Yeah. Are there any other questions pertaining to the text? If not, we don't actually have time for exercise. There's so much grammar in this that we don't have time to do the exercises, but let's just have a quick look at it. So you can, like if you want to practice all the stuff that we saw today, that you get a chance to familiarize yourself with it on your own time. And any questions that arise, we can discuss next time. Okay, one moment. So the exercises would then actually be, okay, negating the imperative. Hopefully we can do that. Here we have whole clauses where we need to negate it. Then forming some lative forms. It's like the formation is never the problem with the lative, the usage is. But here we have some lative sentences that use the lative where we should try to have halfway competent translations. And yeah, some questions and answers that utilize the lative, formation of the necessitive infinitive, yeah, also like replacing some kulash constructions with man ones. The choice of the infinitive, when does one use the standard infinitive, when does one use the necessitive infinitive in these functions? Yeah, and also just the exact translation of these various necessitive constructions, including some negated clauses. Yeah, the usage of particles like ak and at. How does tell these apart? That the just very, one can explicitly say is that the ak, if someone's tricky to put your finger on ak when exactly you want to use it, at is more straightforward. At means also and etc. or so. That usually you can translate it with a concrete word when you're translating at into English. Okay, yeah, making sure that you follow the plot in the text. Yeah, and Yeah, body parts, some more short dialogues to read. And yeah, that's then basically it. So I think I'm going to end the recording now. One moment.